but I wasn't certain if I was doing it right, if what I was doing was right. Eventually, that uncertainty would gnaw at me. Hello, I am GD, your host and writer for Out of Context. This is my third channel update, and is intended to cover who I am. It's a long story, so let's continue. My adventures continued for a time. I had a passion for entertaining my online friends in my own way. One instance in which I shipped a bottle of maple syrup to one of my American friends. Perhaps it was a friendly gesture on my part, or maybe it was just an excuse to learn and comprehend the intricacies of shipping and handling, again on my part. But I think I did it because I could. And I felt a rush from maintaining and engaging with that momentum of mine via that unique perspective of my own. Eventually, we stumbled onto the topic of visiting one another, and in my adventurous fervor, I decided to make it a reality. Why not, right? We decided to make plans. I spoke with my father about this, since he was the closest to being my guardian should disaster, not necessarily related to my plans, arise. He spoke with my friend over Skype to assess his trustworthiness. While my father wasn't the best caregiver psychologically, he was certainly a reliable provider of other necessities. He provided me with a vehicle and gifts to appease my hosts, a case of pepper jellies amongst them. I was also provided a GPS to guide me through the states once I had reached the border. I was nervous about traveling, but my newfound zeal for life kept me calm and collected. Besides, I had endured much suffering up to that point in my life and kept silent through it all, struggling to maintain a clear picture of my feelings and environments. Silence in pleasure, even if a little frightening, was nothing to me. I was ready. When I departed, my GPS wasn't showing our Canadian roads properly, perhaps due to the American residential address I added as my destination. Not a problem. I had done deliveries for my father's business down south, and I knew which highways I would have to take to reach the border. Luckily, the GPS would return to normal function once I crossed over. The border crossing was an intense experience. At worst, the border guards acted and spoke with a vengeful zeal, perhaps in response to some terroristic catastrophe, one of which I had no awareness of. At best, they were merely vigilant. The trip was long, about half a day's worth of travel time. I would be staying at a house my friend determined would best suit my comfort, his girlfriend's house, specifically her family's home. When I arrived at their neighborhood late that evening, I called my friend, and his girlfriend came outside, waved me over, and my vehicle parking was arranged. I had seen his girlfriend before, over video Skype calls, but this would be the first time I met her family. I was nervous, but maintained a calm and polite mannerism, and, in my own unique way, I greeted them. The details are a bit hazy, but it seemed that my arrival and greeting of the family would cause the night to go on with much discussion. It seemed that my unusually calm, polite, introspective, and intelligent communication regarding even the most mundane and trivial of topics would transfix their attention to me. Of course, I was a stranger in their home, only known by our interactions over voice chat and gaming. While my visit and residence there in the States was not unplanned, I'm sure all of this was a bit unusual regarding circumstances their family was accustomed to. That is, an internet friend traveling 12 plus hours to greet them. Eventually, our late talks ended, and I fell asleep. I awoke a couple of hours later when my friend rushed over to greet me. A sleepy hug was shared that morning. As time passed, I met more people and engaged in more activities with them. My stay there would stretch from a possible 1.5 weeks to 2.5 weeks. Perhaps I could have stayed longer. When I talked to the border guards, I confirmed the possibility that I could be staying for up to a month or 4 weeks' time, so I don't think the legality of my stay would have been at risk. And if I really wanted to stay, I suspect my friend and the other people I met would do whatever was possible for me to stay with them. I loved these people, and they loved me back in a way that I had not anticipated was possible, but that gnawing uncertainty was beginning to take hold of me once again. I was nervous about human interaction. My initial interactions with humans in my early stages of development as a toddler, child, and young adult granted me grievous perceptions and expectations. I hid my dangerous feelings and sabotaged my own rage to keep me safe from socially self-incriminating harm. But suddenly, in the presence of these new individuals, whom are undoubtedly human, I find myself feeling safe. It is as if I no longer need to protect myself. But this felt dangerous to me. I still felt like I didn't understand enough about myself. And if I were to live amongst these people that I had fallen in love with, I felt like I'd have no choice. I'd have to explore the depths of my individual capacity with them in my presence. But I was being calm and collected, polite. Could I risk exposing the uglier side of my emotions and feelings to them? Would they still accept me? Perhaps the answer is undoubtedly yes, but what if it wasn't? I couldn't risk it. These were the nicest people I had ever met. They could undoubtedly ward away the human conflict that pursued me, should such a situation arise. They, at the very least, had seen my intentions. How could I risk soiling my words by further exposing them to my unintentionally darker thoughts and feelings? It would only be a matter of time before my calm and polite exterior cracked and the darkness spilled out. What would I gain from extending their exposure to me? Avoiding loneliness? Having companions that could accept my past and the dark entities that spawned from it? Could I really believe that these people, as beautiful as they were, could provide me such a miracle? Maybe I deserve this, deserve the comfort and protection of these kind souls, something that I may never experience ever again. But I couldn't risk it, asking them for this seemingly impossible request, so I didn't. I sealed myself up, retaining my friendly composure. After 2 weeks had passed, I declared my intent to return home in the next few days, sealing my fate inside my tomb of safety. I remember my friend feeling disappointed that I would be leaving. Perhaps he thought my visitation was a miracle in and of itself. Maybe my presence and then my departure was an omen of disappointment to him. Honestly, It's hard to say. My stay had ended, and it was time to return home. I said my farewells to my friend, set my music playlist, and began the long trip home. The GPS took me on a route that was not the same as I had originally taken. Mostly back roads and small towns. The evening grew late, and I was still traversing those dark, ill-lit roads. They were not as comforting as the populated and well-lit interstates I traveled during my arrival. Eventually, I reached the border, and unlike my entry into the States, my exodus was quick, as the border officer hurriedly whisked traffic through the checkpoint. I was back in Canada, and I was tired. I kept driving, eventually acquiring my second wind as the distance to my home drew closer. Same Direction by Hobestank was playing just as I had reached my residence. The journey was long. I gathered my things, entered the house, walked downstairs, and into my basement room. I had returned, safely, to my home residence. But at what cost? The environment here was not as welcoming as my time had been in the States. This wasn't my landlord's intention, but simply my own disposition. Weeks passed by. I was attempting to re-engage myself into my writings, particularly my War Against All Fears, The Chronicles of Artees series. But something was wrong. My laptop was becoming less functional, and I found myself being trapped in a cycle of listening to music, attempting to write or draw, stopping the music, attempting to write or draw again, changing the music, trying again. In the end, I would just get stuck. There was a palpable futility regarding my will to function that I hadn't yet experienced to this degree. And now that I was isolated, what was I supposed to do? Perhaps it would have been simple to believe that these were all minor problems that could be addressed individually. However, I attributed my depression in that house, in my room, as a sign that I was still too immature and lacking in knowledge. But I took this to mean something much more extreme. My failure to overcome my fears in the States during my visit, to open up regarding my true nature, planted a seed of doubt in my consciousness. My experiences there, beyond the mask that hid my true self, my disposition, and my failures at home. I began to believe that the world was silently pushing me out of my habitable position. Eventually, it would push me into a hostile environment that humans are no longer intended to survive. Once again, I felt I was in danger. Thank you for listening in. Have a wonderful day.